I read it in the paper. I saw it on TV. I guess there'll be one more empty seat when I wrestle at Wembley. Hello everyone, Brian Zane here, and I just finished watching Allin London 2024 from Wembley Stadium. My gut reaction after seeing the show, I really enjoyed it. There were a lot of cool moments. There were some surprises, some good, some questionable, I think. One surprise that I predicted halfway correctly was that Jamie Hayter did come back on this night at Wembley Stadium, although she came back during the pre-show, not during the TBS Championship match like I had predicted. Either way, lots to talk about with this show. We will start with the Trios Championship match ladder rules now. You've got the House of Black, you've got the Champions, the Patriarchy, the Bang Bang Gang, and Pac, Claudio, Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta. That was the fourth team that was added on Collision. One of the big stories in this match early on is that Christian Cage is a coward. As soon as the match begins, he runs away, sprints to the back, and leaves Nick Wayne and Luchasaurus in the dust for a while. We get a lot of flip-de-doos, as is expected in a match such as this. The Guns do the was up, and then they tell Juice Robinson to get the tables. And I'm like, are they doing this? Is that their thing now? I've been missing that lately. Everyone's laid out. We get this just wide shot of the empty ring. In comes Christian once again to try and just steal the glory right away. But of course, that backfires. Nick Wayne, coming out of nowhere after getting beat up, hits his cutter on Brody King through a table, but takes most of that bump. The Guns set up a bunch of tables, and Austin and Colton each climb up Claudio and Brody on either side of the ladder, and they're kind of in this like rear naked choke sleeper position or whatever, and they're just both like taunting to each other like, yeah, guns up, baby. It's like, we're gonna die, because they both fall to the back and crush through the tables with like the guys on top of them, which just seems absolutely ridiculous. Nick Wayne with his destroyer through a table on the outside to Malachi Black. Juice brings in what I call the Jeff Hardy Memorial Ladder, the only tall ladder in this thing. He climbs up, gets pushed off, and takes an all-time crotching. There was like no give, no bounce when Juice came down. He pretty much like jumped and landed right on the apron. I really hope he's okay on that one, because that was probably the most grisly looking bump of the entire matchup, if being honest. Christian using Mama Wayne's hairspray. She tries using it on Juice on the apron. He just blocks it with the chair. Teases putting her through a table, Rhino and ECW style, but Killswitch chokeslams him off the table lengthwise. What a nice bounce there. Christian starts to climb the ladder with the help of Killswitch, or does he? Killswitch is suddenly tired of the beratement from Christian, so he grabs his leg, which allows Pac to climb up and grab the belts. And there you have it. The Blackpool Death Club is officially the tag team champions. Those are the ones I had totally written off from the beginning of this predictions, where I thought, oh, they're too weird and random of a group. They're not going to be the champs. And sure enough, they won the whole thing. So shut my mouth. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars out of 5. The story again being that Luchasaurus has had enough and is stopping Christian. I thought that was, a good feel-good moment to start things off for the show, and the crowd was definitely into it. Definitely, a car crash style matchup, and I think, you got 12 guys in that matchup. They all got to get something in, and it was a tricky balance, but I think they all pulled it off. Moving on to the Women's Championship match, Timeless Toni Storm defending against the Glamour Mariah May. One thing that happens early on in this portion of the show, it's part of a larger problem that I think I have with this show, and that's just really questionable production choices. I think that because we go to this crane shot of a bunch of empty seats in one of the upper decks. We're just really focused on this big swath of empty red seats here at Wembley, and then it holds there forever before we finally transition to this. I guess it's a Shining reference, because you see this framed picture of Toni Storm and this date from the 1920s on there. Like, okay, but that's fine. Maybe they were just hoping to transition to that graphic a bit sooner so we didn't have to sit on the shot of all the empty chairs, for so long. But the fact you even had the camera pointing in that direction, I thought was a very interesting call. There's a lot of just missed shots on this show where there's a lot of people doing face and body work, but they're kind of facing away from the hard cam, but there's no one, it seems, in position to get them from the other side of the ring. And that's, why you have all those other cameras. And so just many times in this match and throughout the rest of the show where I'm noticing, man, like there's enough cameras around there. Surely there could have been a better angle, or just held onto a shot for a bit longer, or jumped off it a bit sooner. We see Mina Shirakawa and Rachel Ellering, by the way, watching in the stands. Mariah with a sunset flip powerbomb on Toni early on, like off the apron onto the floor with some oomph. She spits in Luther's face as well. Toni takes a lot of punishment. Mariah hits this sick flying knee off the apron. She drop kicks Luther. Then she slaps her own mother in the face, which, like, what? That seems so random to me. She would just attack her own mother. Well, that kind of comes out of nowhere. I actually went and looked up the plot to All About Eve. Like, is there a scene where, like, the baddie, like, attacks the mother? I don't think there is. So, like, I don't know what that was for, because we see Toni kind of comforting the mom as well. But like that just really kind of just made me go, kind of a record scratch moment in that match for me. Toni hitting the Storm Zero on the damn steps, and now Mariah is bleeding. Toni starts to do the wind up back in the ring, and Mariah just spits in her face again. Mariah with several big hip attacks. She goes to the back, does the Toni pose, but the director misses it. Toni comes back, hits the Storm Zero again. We get a kick out. They're trading strikes. They trade Dick Kick City. They each do headbutts. We get a double down. Mariah goes for the belt, but Luther takes it away from her, gives her a single deuce. Toni has the shoe, but she can't bring herself to go for the kill shot. Mariah knees the shit out of Toni, and then in the final inglorious act, she steals Toni's own finisher, the Storm Zero, pins her, and claims the championship. And the usurpment of everything about Toni Storm, like her move and her championship, all that is complete. 4 stars out of 5 for me on this one. I think it was a great story, some fabulous violence. Again, Mariah slapping her own mom in the middle of the match just was kind of like, oh, okay, but here we go. That just seemed totally out of left field for me. And it was, besides that though, I think that everything else we saw in the ring was pretty much what I had hoped it would be. There was a lot of just great storytelling, and there was that melodrama, and there was that passion between the two of them, especially from Toni, all the emotions she was feeling. Great run she had, I think there were times where I was kind of saying, this is a gimmick that doesn't need the women's championship. But the longer it went on, and the way they built this protege story with Mariah May, it's perfect. It works out so well that she held on to the belt for that long, because it's the perfect person to take it from her. And I think they really executed this story. It's truly, I think, one of the better storylines of the entire year for AEW. And it just really is great that they allowed them to really let this go for as long as they did, and to not get cold feet on it. But yeah, I think Toni's been a great character. I think her losing the belt now can maybe give her the chance to do some more evolution with the character. I like how Shivani, after the match, said, I don't think she can accept this reality. How deep does that kind of line go? Because the whole, beginning of this character was that she was having like a mental breakdown, and that's how we got Timeless Toni Storm. So what will this championship loss bring about in the future? Time will tell, but you could tell that the Wembley crowd really loved them some Toni. The appreciation they showed her after the match was over, I think, was very nice. For the World Championship, Chris Jericho defends against Hook. Jericho once again has Fozzy performing at Wembley Stadium. He sings himself to the ring doing his own theme song. At least he didn't do the Freddie Mercury noises like last year. Hook actually gets some of the heartbeat noises like Taz used to get, in WWE. So when he came out before his main theme played, that was kind of a cool moment as well. Hook having the kinesio tape over the eye, I thought was a very interesting choice. It's like it's too rambunctious, too much action to wear a standard eye patch. Aren't there athletic eye patches that kind of go around the whole head? Like Bryan Danielson had that, I'm pretty sure. So that was kind of funny. Hook just got the smattering of tape on his eye. It's a 3-on-1 beating from the get-go on Hook. Taz on commentary just muttering to himself about this. The code breaker by Jericho, but Hook kicks out at 1 and suplexes Bill and Keith away. We're back to 1-on-1. Jericho pulls out this bag of, at first what I thought were apples when they first fell out of the bag, but no, they're cricket balls balls because we're in England. And so Hook ends up suplexing Jericho. And I don't know if he was supposed to land on at least one of those balls, but like they didn't get any of them. But then you see Hook like throwing the balls at Jericho and like hitting them with this high guy's cricket bat that he found under the ring. Was that his cricket bat that he had there all along, or was that he just found Jericho's weapon? I did like seeing Hook hitting that cricket bat assisted T-bone suplex. Brian Keith interferes again. Jericho gets his walls onto Hook. Hook gets his own version in exchange, but Big Bill interferes now. The baddies bring out a table and a barbed wire board. Hook's still fighting the whole world here. Then at one point, when he makes his comeback, just takes his eye tape off and he's like, yeah, I've been able to see the whole time. Like, why are you tricking him now? Like, why didn't you just like take that off at the beginning of the match? That seemed like a weird time to do it for me. Jericho fights back. There's more chicanery with Brian Keith. Taz has finally had enough. He gets up and puts on the Kata Hajime on Brian Keith. Hook with the red rum on Jericho. They both tap out and Hook regains the title. Nice father-son moment here between Taz and Hook. I give it 2 stars out of 5. You know, I was happy to see Taz kind of stand up and help Hook out at the end. That was a cool moment. But man, compared to like what we saw in the previous matchup here, this one just feels like a bit too zany, you know? And hey, I love zany, stupid shit in my wrestling. I think maybe this could have benefited from being spaced out a little farther away from a match like that. I don't know. It just felt like, especially when you think about a match we're going to get later on, the whole like, ooh, gimmick in a bag thing. I think that this match seems almost like, I don't want to say a parody, but definitely doesn't seem like the same kind of, not the same product we're watching here when you compare like this match, Jericho and Hook, to one we're going to see a little bit later. Either way, I hope Hook can move on from this and do something else, either with the FTW Championship or not. And then as far as Jericho goes, you know, who is going to fall into his vortex next? Time will tell, or maybe it's time for another gimmick change or time for a break, who knows? But I think that this run, at least, I'm glad that the thing with he and Hook is over, because now it's definitely time to move on to something else. AEW tag title match up next. You got the Young Bucks defending for the first time since winning the belts against FTR and the #1 contenders, the Acclaimed. I liked the Young Bucks and their Sgt. Pepper inspired outfits when they came to the ring. The John and Paul colors. FTR, they're wearing the Bret Hart inspired trunks for this matchup. Oh, and speaking of FTR, I'm very excited because I'm actually going to be calling a match of theirs on September 29th for Prestige Wrestling. So, you know, that's going to be fun. And I wish I could tell you what Max Caster was rapping about at the beginning, but honestly, I couldn't make out a word of it. A lot of fast back and forth in this matchup here. A lot of German suplexes by FTR throughout the course of this thing. The Bucks turn it on and pull off their flurry of signature moves. Then we get this sequence of moves where like all the guys kind of help each other, where it's like, here's this unlikely tandem doing this tag team finisher. Here's this other weird combination doing it. I thought you could have really kind of expanded that. I think it was only maybe 2 times they did it, but you could have gone a lot more different combinations and scenarios there. Billy Gunn, who got super kicked earlier, hits the Famouser onto Matt on the belt. We get this close call from the Acclaimed, but Nicholas breaking the pin up. The Bucks end up hitting the EVP trigger to win and retain the championships. But then right after the bell, out come Gibson and Drake, the grizzled young veterans. They stare down the Bucks, who powder. GYV beat up FTR instead, but what an impact they're making here. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. I think it was, you know, a very entertaining, frenetic tag team matchup. I think, especially when the Bucks get into that second gear and it's like flowing to the spot. That's always a really cool thing to see, how fast the gears can change in a match like that. Like I said, a lot of fun, close calls in this one, but it makes sense for the Bucks to hold on to the belts for a little bit longer. And seeing the debut of Gibson and Drake, first time we've seen them since they were part of the Naiad in NXT. It's good to see them kind of as themselves again. No weird contact lenses. And I think that's a team that's very, I think, underrated in the grand scheme of things. I've always liked the work I've seen of theirs, and it'll be curious to see if there's, you know, what kind of room they're going to have, and what kind of run they're going to have in AEW. And they seem to be gunning for the Young Bucks. Could be a very interesting matchup, clash of styles there, and we'll have to see where that goes. Up next, the Casino Gauntlet match to see who will get a future shot at the AEW title. They even clarified said over the weekend on social media, hey, this works the same way as Money in the Bank. You can have a cash-in anytime you want, essentially. So it definitely will send the feelers up for a lot of people like myself who's kind of expecting that sort of thing to happen in the main event. But we shall see. The number one entrant in this match is Orange Cassidy, who gets a Mr. Bean parody entrance for himself. I thought that was kind of funny. Okada comes out next. As the match begins, he wants a hug. He and Orange hug it out. Okada makes that switch with his face, working the hard cam. Ooh, what a rotter. Out next is Nigel McGuinness. Holy crap, what a shock this was here. First match we've seen him in several years. I don't actually remember the actual year of his last match. I'm going to put it here. Either way, it's a long damn time, and I know that there were a lot of long period of time where people thought he was never going to wrestle again with all his concussions and other injuries and whatnot. Still, it's really cool to see him in shape. He's back looking really good, and definitely a surprise that the audience was all there for. One of the biggest pops of the night really was Nigel's return. He gets some of his big shots in. Kyle O'Reilly comes out next. Then out comes Zack Sabre Jr. He gets in some graps with Nigel, then with Okada. Roderick Strong of the Undisputed Kingdom comes out next. Then the conglomeration is in full effect when Mark Briscoe arrives. Hangman Page comes out next. He hits Orange Cassidy with the Deadeye. Then in comes Double J Jeff Jarrett, who's been on quite the run as of late. Jarrett gets powerbombed out of the ring, though, and caught by everyone else. Then up next is Ricochet, formerly known as Ricochet. It was really cool to see him make this appearance here. It was reported over the weekend that Ricochet had signed with AEW, and then there was all this speculation, where's he going to show up on this show, if at all? And this is kind of a nice way to do a soft launch of his character here. You know, he's not in a big storyline right away. Just shows up, makes an impact, does his flip-de-doos to start things off when he gets his first run. Then out comes Christian Cage getting 2 paychecks tonight. Karen Jarrett distracting Hangman Jarrett. El Kabong's Page. Finally out comes Luchasaurus, no longer kill switch. He grabs Christian and then chokeslams Kyle O'Reilly instead. Grabs Cage, puts him on top Kyle O'Reilly for the cover and the win. Oh, I give it 3 stars out of 5. That is a swerve I did not see coming. I really thought that was going to be the breakup of Luchasaurus and Christian. I guess we're putting that off one more time at least. And eventually they're going to have to do the official blow off, and either it's going to be the greatest thing ever, or it's going to go over really flat because they cried wolf so many times already. It's an interesting strategy to throw a championship match, deliberately lose the belts, to plant the seeds of dissent for whom exactly? Not the wrestlers who are part of this casino gauntlet. It's just for the benefit of the fans who get to witness part A and part B. And I don't know, besides that, it just seems like it was an incredibly risky gamble in kayfabe because, what if the match ended before Christian or Killswitch came out? Could have ended early there, and their whole idea of losing the trios belts would have been ruined. So that was interesting. I think it's another one of those, the recurring trope of Christian always being able to sneak in and steal these kind of opportunities in the cheapest way possible. I mean, he's great at it. The finish went over, I think, the way they wanted it to, where the fans just kind of shat on it. They didn't like it because, they want people to hate Christian. Okay. But it definitely, throws a wrench into, I think a lot of people, myself included, thought that, this has got to be Hangman's and everything. So it's, not the case. Hangman looked befuddled. Oh my gosh, my journey must continue. I have to figure out some other way to do it. But Christian winning it was definitely unexpected, to say the least. For the American Championship, MJF will defend the title against Will Ospreay. And Ospreay this night is sponsored by the new Assassin's Creed game. I guess it's very fortunate that he's got that Assassin's Creed tattoo, because then it seemed like a natural tie-in with his new game. Hey, are those flippy guys in the hoodies going to be in the game too? MJF comes out in this big stars and stripes robe and his Lex Luger-ass tights. I'll be your scumbag! No, 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 no! MJF gets streamers for his entrance, and they are going to be stuck up in the rafters for the whole rest of the night. It is kind of a distraction. It's a huge distraction in this matchup too, because for ages there's just unfurled rolls of streamers and other streamer remnants caught up in the ropes, all on the mat. they're in there forever. Like, at one point, the referee got to pick the shit up and throw it out, you know? Keep the ring clean so the fans can focus on the wrestling. Because after a while, all I was focusing on, like, when are they going to clean the ring up while they're having the match? There's a lot of great back and forth in this matchup. Ospreay hitting a Sasuke special early on. MJF hitting a very sarcastic kangaroo kick. Ospreay going for another Sasuke, but MJF catches him and hits this tombstone. Somehow there is more streamer trash in the ring now than there was when the match began. Ospreay hitting this crazy shooting star press onto MJF, hanging on the rope. MJF hits the crossroads. This is where we see a lot of selling of the neck by Will as this match goes on from here. Will tries another Oz cutter on the apron, but MJF gets out of the way. Panama Sunrise on the apron by MJF. Ospreay barely avoiding the 10 count. Will hits the cutter on the apron a little bit later. Still looks pretty gnarly whether you hit it or don't. Ospreay goes for the hidden blade at one point and just obliterates this cameraman, maybe Plant, on the outside. What a bump by that dude. Ospreay avoids one belt shot, but not another one. Ospreay still kicks out. We get a brainbuster as well. We get a ref bump. They trade Tiger Driver attempt, MJF with a low blow, and Excalibur with one of the best lines of commentary where he goes, under the best of circumstances, a low blow sucks. MJF produces some knucks, and then a masked man stops him. We find out it's Daniel Garcia, a huge pop, as this is the guy that MJF wrote off in this violent fashion several weeks ago. A lot of rumors as to whether or not Garcia was even going to stay in the company. I guess this is a sign that he's sticking around. Stares a hole through MJF, and that distraction is enough for Ospreay to hit the hidden blade. He finally pulls off Tiger Driver 91. We get the cover and the win. Ospreay wins and is the new champion. Christopher Daniels comes into the ring and brings back out the international belt. Will holds it up and gets even more pyro as he celebrates. I give it 4 stars out of 5. This was a terrific athletic contest. Like I said, it didn't go quite as long as the hour-long epic they had on Dynamite several weeks ago, but this was still just a great showing of, these are 2 guys who are going to be tentpole figures in AEW for a long time. I think we will see more matches from them in the future, maybe not immediately, but I think that if this is the caliber of action we're going to get from these guys, I look forward to what they're going to give us in the years to come. I think it was, it seemed kind of early for the MJF, the whole Proto-America thing. It just seems very short-lived. Like, he literally came on, won this belt, held it for maybe a few weeks. They got a whole new belt for him, this whole America thing. And I guess it just sets him up to be more of a baddie and more hated when Ospreay beats him and restores the international championship. But yeah, it just seems kind of like this, the fact that it was such this big shift in the evolution of MJF's character, especially how he first turned heel after he came back. And now what's he going to go from here? Is he still going to be the American thing? Is he going to pivot back to some other kind of version of his past self? We'll have to see about that. For the TBS Championship, Mercedes Mone defense against Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. I really liked Mercedes' entrance here. She gets literally the royal treatment. You've got this shot of Buckingham Palace, on the LED screens. She comes out in this carriage, and she's got all these little corgis in the carriage with her as well. My kid was in here with us watching at that point, and that was her favorite part of the whole show, was seeing all the corgis. That was really nice. But then my first thought when I saw them was, oh no, are they going to have more pyro? Don't scare the dogs. I remember what happened to Pharaoh. Also, I wonder if Mercedes and MJF should have checked with each other about the gear they're going to wear for this show here. Camille is a big help to Mercedes early on, pulling her out of the ring at one point. There's this big backbreaker over the top turnbuckle by Mone, which is interesting because I feel like that's a bump that she was more privy to taking, especially back in WWE. I remember some times where she and Charlotte would have that kind of spot. Always looked gnarly, so it's kind of interesting reversal to see her doing it for once. Mercedes hitting the 3 Amigos. She body slams Britt off the second rope. That's a hard looking landing. Britt fights back. She's going for the lockjaw. They are fighting over the lockjaw glove back and forth. Off the second rope, Mone goes for another slam, but they actually rotate through and Britt slams her instead. Mercedes grabs the title belt. She totally hits the referee by mistake, and the ref just kind of no-sells it. And then we get this other moment where, we've got Britt does the Eddie Guerrero, and that makes Camille gets ejected. But boy, that really took me out of it because, yeah, Mercedes crashed hard into Paul Turner, and I guess they're like, well, we can't have the finish be now, even though for all intents and purposes that should have been it. I think that it was a bit sloppy at that point, and that really took me out of it. Mercedes pushes Britt into the rope, then Mercedes hits the Mone Maker to win and retain. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. I think there were some moments of brilliance in this matchup, but also it seemed like a struggle at times. And I just didn't think it was the best work of either of them. I just wasn't really feeling this match throughout, which is a bit of a bummer because I think on paper this could be a really good match. I don't know if they'll have another chance to do one, but yeah, I don't know who shoulders more of the responsibility because I think that both had their issues, but I think it was just, it could have been a much better match. Up next, a Coffin match for the TNT title as Darby Allin challenges Jack Perry. Darby is pinhead on this evening. He comes out with a lot of thumbtacks just glued to his head. That man, he's a wild man, I tell you what. One point early on, Taz on commentary brings up like his history with Darby Allin. He's like, Team Taz, the golden days of AEW. I'm like, Taz, you shouldn't say that part out loud. Darby goes for a dive, but Jack moves. Big collision into the casket on the outside. Jack then pulls out a bag of, is that real glass I see? Oh, is that a old reference to Wembley last year? Real glass? I see what you did there. But Jack's actually the one who gets dropped onto it when Darby does a skateboard drop. Then we hear this fuck CM Punk chant. Jack is taping Darby's hands together, but Darbs is still able to fight back for a bit. Up to the ramp, a powerbomb by Perry. Then Jack tying Darby's legs together with his own belt, then throws him off the ramp onto a table of stuff below. Jack putting Darby in this body bag, drags him into the coffin. Darby is like sitting up in the coffin. You think he's got some fight left in him, but no, big knee to the side of the head, and Jack closes the casket shut, and he wins, and he retains the belt. And then afterwards, you've got the Young Bucks making their way back out to the ring with this old-looking can of gasoline. Real gas, cry me a river, as they pour it onto Darby in the coffin. Suddenly the lights cut out. We hear Seek and Destroy by Metallica, and it's Sting. He's back here for the first time since Revolution, and he helps chase off the baddies. He drops the double Scorpion death drop and basically saves Darby from being set on fire. What a mensch. How fortunate it was that he was in London. I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars out of 5, if only because I was just kind of shocked at how relatively brief it was. Obviously a lot of big moments, like holy shit moments in this thing, but it just felt like, it was kind of short. I expected more of a back and forth, and it was definitely weighed more toward Perry in this one, which is good. I think you need to see more of him show that dominance. It's kind of surprising to me that this one wasn't more drawn out and agonizing than I think a lot of us kind of expected it to be. Cool to see Sting make that appearance there, get a big pop out of the fans, and kind of a nice way to kind of get that back for Darby. So, he doesn't die, I guess. It's main event time, title versus career, Swerve versus Danielson. Really cool couple of back-to-back packages for Danielson where they do this kind of recap through his career. I think in one of them you actually see a split second of him wrestling Kamala in ROH. It's definitely a wild moment in his career, very unlikely opponent given the rest of his resume. I'm glad that match got some love. Then Prince Nana puts the Jimmy Rave Embassy robe on Swerve. We get this live remix of his theme during his entrance. Just cool to see two Washington State boys making it to the main event. They put that over on commentary. Also really cool to see Prince Nana, a guy whose career sadly kind of just nothing really happened with him after his time at ROH. So for him to get this chance to come back, because Tony Khan's a fan of his work from Ring of Honor, comes here and just gets this main event moment at Wembley Stadium with this huge house. I mean, that's a really cool turnaround, real cool renaissance period for Nana as well. They also bring out Jim Ross to do commentary for this matchup, who tries to remind you at every step of the way that he signed Danielson to a contract 25 years ago. Of course, the big story here is that Danielson's family is at ringside. There's Brie Garcia and then their children. And early in the match, Danielson actually hits this big dive to the outside. It goes right to celebrate with the family. That was a fun moment. But of course, that sort of thing is going to backfire and be turned on its ear. They're fighting on the apron. The referee gets knocked down. And in that chaos, Nana gets the ring bell underneath them on the apron. Big Death Valley driver onto Danielson on the ring bell. So he lands on the back of his head and then is somehow bleeding from the front of his head. That is got to be some huge brain impact to just go boom and just come out the front like that. Swerve trying to traumatize Danielson's children now by stomping his bloody head. We get this long zoom out during Bryan's kicks to the chest when he makes his comeback. That is my favorite shot of the whole show. Top rope tiger suplex by Danielson. Holy shit. He works his way to cattle mutilation. Swerve hits this like vertebreaker style move onto Danielson. It looks pretty clean, nothing worse than the tiger driver he took from Ospreay earlier in the year. But you have this moment where the medical team comes out again, like, oh my God, are we really doing this again? Like, this is the trope that I brought up. The Bryan Danielson is like gonna sell. We're gonna have this like, oh my God, I think he's really hurt moment. And for them to do that like right in front of like the family being there, I thought was almost a bit too on the nose. But Swerve is able to shoo the medical team away. We get that big Swerve stomp, but Danielson is able to kick out. We even get this dramatically Bryan reaching out to his family moment. Boom, a house call, but Bryan kicks out again. Danielson makes this muy dramatic comeback. Swerve absorbing this big knee to the chest. Swerve going in for the kill, but Hangman Page shows up and causes a bit of a ruckus. I love the security is ushering him out, which is like never happens in the history of professional wrestling, because it's not like Hangman is not signed. It's not like he's some like rogue agent. So it's like everyone does run-ins in wrestling, and security never comes out when the third man runs in. Danielson almost wins from that distraction, but there's a kick out. Danielson hits this other knee out of nowhere. Yet another knee. Swerve falls into the label lock. Swerve fights it for a moment, but Daniel with the joint manipulation, he locks it back in. Swerve taps, and Danielson wins. He is finally the world champion. What a beautiful moment here as he celebrates with his family in the ring. That honestly got me teared up a little bit when you consider what Bryan Danielson's been through his whole career, the ups and downs with his health, having been retired and flirting with retirement now, and all these things, and like what he went through coming back to wrestling in the first place. To see him, win the championship here in Wembley, what a cool moment. But I love the fact that you also had Claudio and Wheeler Yuta there with them because he's part of the Blackpool Combat Club, and then there's Pac, who is just also there and just stands there looking like, yes, yes, you won the belt. That is a very nice thing with you and your family. Just standing there, and he's just looking like he's just, happy to be there at the very end. But that was an incredible main event. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5 because, hell yeah, Bryan Danielson's the champion, and I think it's just very cool to see. It's just the story we've been hearing for so long that Danielson has actively avoided having the belt put on him. He refuses to have the belt put on him and all this stuff. I think that's very lovely, very humble of him, but I think that also this is just a time to celebrate Danielson. And, this is the last full-time year of his career. I think he should go out and have this run and be represented and be presented in a way that is befitting of him, because I think he's that good, and him winning the championship was really cool. I think Swerve was also a great champion. He had some terrific matches. I think that there's always a chance for him to be a champion again. I'd love to see a rematch, the two of them at Wrestle Dream in Tacoma, bring that Washington flavor back home. We'll have to see about that and see where Hangman gets involved, because again, I was so confident that Hangman was going to be involved in the finish and like cost Swerve the belt or do something to be the champ by the end of this night. Obviously that didn't work out because Christian Cage won the Casino Gauntlet, but he still got involved, and I think that just adds to the story. And that just was a lot of great just drama of like Danielson and the connection he was having with his family, looking to them the entire time, reaching out, being bloody, but still being able to overcome all that and come away the champion. It was just a really awesome moment, and that's the kind of stuff you watch wrestling for. My final grade for Allin London 2024 is a B+. This show definitely had its share of rough edges, some kind of awkward moments, some head-scratching booking decisions, and some questionable camera shots as well. But I think overall, it was just a show that I enjoyed watching. I had a good time watching it with my friends and my family. We were together watching it as well. There were enough cool moments that washed away the bad ones. I'm not sure it's one of the best shows I've seen all year, but again, a lot of really neat things that happened here. Danielson winning the championship the way he did, I thought was just a superb moment, a top moment for AEW this year. And, a lot is going to be made about the attendance, this year compared to last. Obviously, not nearly as many people as the year before, but when you start off that big and that kind of number, anything else after that is going to seem like a disappointment. But 50,000 or however much the final count is, I'm not sure they actually did a tally live on the show, but it's still very impressive for anyone to draw that much, especially if they are not WWE. And I think there will be some things talked about as to why there's that drop off. Probably has something to do with, fan interest, has some of it. I think some of it does come down to, well, that big Taylor Swift set was pretty cumbersome. That's going to go into it as well. But I think there's going to be multiple factors into that. And so we're going to have to wait and see how this affects the next time they're in London for Forbidden Door next year. I know Allin next year is going to be in Texas. So we'll see how they can draw in a big arena in America. But despite all that, I still think that AEW put on a really strong show, one that they can be proud of, and I think the crowd definitely appreciated what they were seeing for the most part. Again, time will tell with Christian Cage and how that turned out, but man, what a great first storyline that's going to be for Danielson. He's going against Christian Cage, who loves to razz people who have dead dads. Danielson has a dead dad. I mean, the story writes itself. But what did you think about Allin, folks? I want to hear about it in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and hit that bell icon for all the notifications. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.